Hi, I'm Paul Edwards, author of the Mourners Woods books, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight, I'm watching John Carter of Mars from 2012. Edgar Rice Burroughs, the author, created a character for the ages, a brave, heroic figure who survived against all odds in a wild, exotic landscape and had adventure after adventure and has become immortalized in popular culture, is a household name, and will be remembered by people long after we're all gone. That character was Tarzan. He also created John Carter of Mars. John Carter is not exactly a household name, although, to be fair, John Carter was a popular character at the time that he first came out. He came out in some pulp magazine stories and some novels. But the big difference is that he never was successfully adapted to the movie screen, whereas Tarzan has been adapted to movie and TV screens over and over and over again. There were silent Tarzan movies back in the days of silent films. There were a long series of talking Tarzan films. There were movie serials in the days of movie serials. There were several Tarzan movie serials. There was a popular television series on Tarzan, based on Tarzan. There was an animated TV series, which is not well remembered now, but it was pretty good back around 1980. And even in this day and age, Tarzan gets a new movie every few years, like maybe every 5 or 10 years. John Carter, nothing like that. It's not nearly the household name that Tarzan is. John Carter is a story that takes place on Mars and has a lot of strange alien creatures in it. And I think that probably is one of the big reasons why it lingered in development hell for a lot of its history. People have thought about making a film of John Carter, but it just never seemed to happen. So finally, in 2012, we got a finished, full-length John Carter of Mars movie. It's pretty good. It's not perfect. There's a couple things wrong with it, but it's really not bad. Unfortunately, it is one of the biggest bombs in all of Hollywood history. It lost a freaking fortune. And you can debate why this has happened. One reason that's often cited is that the marketing campaign for it was terrible and apparently run by people who didn't understand marketing very well. But another problem is a bit more subtle than that. Sometimes there can be an intellectual property and the idea gets copied and ripped off and so forth. So when you go to remake that initial intellectual property, people are like, oh, this is so corny and derivative, when in fact this was the original that's, just being represented. John Carter was influential on other science fiction stories. A great example of which is Avatar. The very phenomenally successful film Avatar was heavily influenced by the John Carter novels. But when the John Carter movie came out in 2012, one of the complaints was, oh, this is just a ripoff of Avatar. No, John Carter came first. But the public perception that it was a ripoff of Avatar is bad anyway, and I think that was a significant problem that the film had. It's visually, the film is stunning. It's hard to find anything to complain about visually in the film. There are a lot of well-known actors in this film, but you don't actually know it until you read the credits because a lot of them were portraying characters that were done by motion capture. For example, William Dafoe was a Mars alien, and he performed his role in a motion capture suit. And what we're seeing on the screen is a space monster talking in William Dafoe's voice. So you may not immediately recognize which character is voiced by an actor that you do know. But if you go through the cast, it's actually fairly impressive, the number of well-known actors that they got in this film. Strangely, the lead, John Carter himself, was not played by a well-known actor. And one possible reason for that is John Carter's backstory. John Carter was a Civil War veteran who fought for the Confederacy. And it's understandable that an actor might not want to take the part where a Confederate soldier is portrayed as the good guy, as the hero, for fear that that might hurt that actor's career. So I can understand why that might give an actor pause. And the filmmakers were well aware of this. And so what they did was, instead of just running away from the character's history as a Confederate soldier, what they did was they made it so that, yes, he was a Confederate soldier, but he didn't like service in the military. He didn't like war. He was disillusioned by war. He was disillusioned by the army. He was disillusioned by the whole thing. He had contempt for his superiors in the Confederacy. And, he was a Confederate soldier, but not one who liked being a Confederate soldier. That's the way that they decided to present him. Also, they downplayed his military service because the scenes that were set back in the 19th century on Earth minimized the amount of portrayal of him as a soldier and focused more on the characters who were discussing his death or alleged death. What John Carter does basically is this. He's able to astral project himself to the planet Mars and form a sort of a physical body on Mars that is a copy of his real body here on Earth. So without benefit of a spaceship, he's able to travel to Mars and have adventures there and interact with people there, and then intermittently return here to Earth in his earthly body. So it's a convenient way to explain how he is able to go back and forth from story to story. And it's fairly clever. It also is reminiscent. If you're an H.P. Lovecraft buff, you're probably aware of certain H.P. Lovecraft stories where people jump back and forth from having their mind here in an Earth person's body to having their mind in the place of some space alien in some far-off landscape. I don't know if Lovecraft intentionally was copying Burroughs, but it certainly is extremely similar. So when they made this John Carter film, they thought that it was going to do well, and they had in mind that they were going to make a trilogy of these. Well, this film bombed so drastically that all thoughts of doing any follow-up movies were completely discarded. So you're never going to get to see what happened next. You'll have to read the books to find that out. I'm sure that sometime in the future, somebody will revive the property, but when they do, it's going to be a completely new production with new actors and a new interpretation, I'm sure. So it's a shame because the movie itself is absolutely worth watching. If you liked Avatar, you would like this. And it's worth seeing. It's just not worth investing any money in there being any sequels, because there's not going to be. Listen, if you enjoy classic monsters and vintage horror, check out my book series, the Mourners Woods books. I'm self-published on Amazon. I've written a series of novels that take place in a haunted forest. Basically, I write books for people who like monster movies. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourners Woods books. Thanks for letting me talk to you some about John Carter of Mars. I'll see you in Mourners Woods.